Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to BJ&Co. This is Savi. Hi, Ben. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Kind of excited to keep on this Odyssey journey.
Yeah, have you gotten a role yet for this YouTube channel? What's your title, Ben?
A role yet? Nah, I don't need a title. I'm Ben. That's all I
All right.
need. That's
Well,
all I need.
I'm Savi, the chief engineer of Laughter and Cheer, and this is Odyssey, the next generation science game,
Yeah.
and
So,
and reading simulator. If you like reading, or if you dislike reading, give us a thumbs up. Let's look for 15.
yeah, I think that'd be a good one.
15's good. We're on page 100 already?
Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous.
Fuck.
So, I mean, as we've been doing the previous ones, guys, if you don't want to hear all of the reading of the journals, or if you've read them all yourselves, the link will be down below to skip through it. But we'll just dive on into this from the journal what we found at the end of last episode. So, I thought to prove the heliocentric model, I might need to consider things besides the sun and the earth. When I said that, Mom had a surprise for me. She brought Sid's telescope. Sid didn't even know she brought it, so he was excited too. He ran and fetched it from the boat, but setting it up and calibrating it is taking a while. While we're waiting, Mom pointed out that the planet Jupiter, to my naked eyes, it looks just like a star, though it's a little brighter than the brightest star Sirius. Dad said that for the ancients, the only difference between the planets and the stars was that the stars always kept the same distance from one another, while the planets wandered independently, on top of the background stars, over weeks and months. He said the word planet comes from the Greek word wanderer. I asked Dad if this was like how the sun slowly wanders over the background of stars of the celestial sphere.
He said yes. In fact, the sun itself was considered to be a planet, and so was the moon. It was the Earth that wasn't a planet. So the ancients thought that there was a total of 7 planets: the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, since they all wander over the background stars. I asked about Uranus and Neptune, but Dad said they can't be seen without a telescope, so the ancients didn't know about them. I guess that each of the 7 planets had to have their own celestial spheres to be able to wander separately. Dad said yes. I could think of it, Aristotle's cosmos, as nested spheres, like the layers of an onion. Starting at the center of the universe, the terrestrial realm was made of spheres of earth, water, air, and fire, and the celestial realm above was made of the spheres for the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, in that order. It seems like it's taking Sid a long time to set up his telescope, but I think he's almost done.
The first thing we looked at through the telescope is the crescent moon. It was huge and amazing. I could see so much detail. Dad said Aristotle thought the moon was a perfectly smooth sphere. Magnified with the telescope, I could see that it's not. The moon's surface has mountains and valleys. It's not perfectly flat and smooth at all. Mom asked how I could be sure that's what I was seeing, and I told her to look at the boundary between the light and the dark parts of the moon. If the moon were a sphere with no bumps, the dark edges would be smooth. But the real moon shadow was jaggy. There were also dark patches in the lit region showing the light wasn't getting there. These were probably valleys or craters, and there were some bright spots in the dark part. That probably where the sun hits only the tops of mountain peaks, but not the bases, because the moon horizon blocked the sunlight from hitting the base of these mountains. This was like when Dad showed me how the mountain tops of the wretched islands could be seen before the bases, because they were blocked by the Earth's horizon. So I could now at least claim that Aristotle was wrong as far as the moon's surface was concerned. It wasn't a perfectly smooth sphere. It seemed to be made of earthy matter.
This doesn't prove the heliocentric model is better than the geocentric one, but at least I've finally made a tiny hole in Aristotle's worldview. Maybe if I keep finding flaws, one of them will prove my case. At lunch, Mom looked at my ankle and said it's healed enough for me to get back to work helping repair the bridge to the largest section of the wretched miner. Dad's still working on Bunker Island, examining and cataloging everything he can find, but he comes down for meals with the rest of us. This time, Guillaume came down with him. See, I got it right.
Yeah.
And I asked what he was doing up there. He said Dad saw a boat out to sea and was asking him about it, but it was just a fishing boat. I glanced at Dad, and the look on his face told me he's not so sure. Then Dad asked Mom about solar filters for the telescope so we could look at the sun. I think he was just trying to change the subject, but I also really want to be able to look at the sun. Guillaume dropped his sandwich when he heard that. He works hard and seems nice, but he doesn't talk much, except this time when he suddenly had a lot to say about how you could never look at the sun, especially not through a telescope. It could blind you. When Dad could get a word in
Edgewise.
Guillaume, that we have special filters that make it possible to look at the sun without hurting your eyes.
Guillaume didn't say more about it, but he also wouldn't look at the sun through the lens, once Sid installed the filters. I didn't expect to see anything but bright light, but I was wrong. The sun had these irregular-shaped dark spots on it. Dad asked me how I knew. The spots were on the sun, not on the telescope, or whether the spots could be small planets or asteroids moving in front of the sun. The first thing I did was move the telescope a bit. The spots stayed in the same places on the sun, so they weren't on the lens. But how could I tell whether the spots were on the surface of the sun or not? If they were planets or something else floating in space, I guess I'd have to wait for them to move and see what happens. It's been 4 days since I last wrote. We've been so busy with the bridge, all day long. It sometimes feels like we're building a bridge, not fixing one. Mom says we've got days more work still left. Ugh, it's exhausting. But every day at lunch I've been looking up at the sun, sketching where the spots are, and I think I know what's going on now.
Wow. After the first 2 days, I saw the spots had moved across the sun in the same direction. That means if they're on the surface, the sun must be rotating. But I still couldn't be sure they were actually on the sun. I needed to wait till one got to the edge and see what happened next. Then, today, one spot near the edge vanished. It didn't keep going into space. And the closer it got to the edge of the sun, the skinnier it looked. Just like how spots on a sphere get thinner until it disappears around the other side. That means the spot was on the sun. I also saw a brand new sunspot appear between two old ones. It didn't drift in from somewhere else. It got created and then grew bigger over time. And one of the other big spots shrunk too before it got too close to the edge. So it looks like the sun is a sphere. It rotates. The sunspots are on the surface, and they are born and grow and shrink and disappear over time. Dad said that according to Aristotle, everything in the celestial sphere is made of ether and must be perfectly smooth and never change. I proved the moon was bumpy, and now I've shown that the sun changes over time. The sunspots are always on the sun itself, and they look to be imperfections on the sun that appear and then later disappear.
I don't know what they are, but they show that the sun is not eternally unchanging. Dad agreed that I'd made another hole in Aristotle's view, but it still didn't prove that geocentrism was wrong, or that heliocentrism was the real description of the universe. But I bet I could find more flaws with Aristotle's model and finally discover the one that disproves it once and for all. Sid joked at dinner about how long it's taking me to disprove the primitive ideas of a guy over 2,000 years old. Dad told him he needs to remember that Aristotle was considered the scientific authority of the Western world for most of that time. And a few hundred years after Aristotle, still nearly 2,000 years ago, an astronomer named Ptolemy used Aristotle's physics to refine his own geocentric model of the universe. Dad said Ptolemy's new model was so accurate that planetariums still use it today to calculate the positions of the planets and stars for their shows. Ptolemy wrote a work called Almagest, outlining his geocentric model, and it has become standard textbook in astronomy for 1,500 years.
Jesus.
God.
I mean, this is coming up on probably the longest book I've ever read in my life.
115 pages?
Yeah, so then in the 16th century, an amateur astronomer named Copernicus published a heliocentric model of the universe. This sparked off a fierce debate in Europe over which model was true. Dad said I was retracing the debate, and he was extremely happy about it because real science is about investigation and discovery, not just reading the words of a textbook author. Dad said Copernicus put the sun at the center of the universe, and in increasing order from distance were the planets Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and finally the starry sphere.
Yeah.
The moon was the odd one. It circled the Earth while all the other heavenly bodies circled the sun. The Earth rotated around its axis once a day and also revolved around the sun once a year, just like the model I built. Dad said that even though I think Copernicus's model is simpler, people during his time felt Ptolemy. I think it's Ptolemy. I think the P
Yeah,
is silence.
I think so too.
Ptolemy's geocentric model was more satisfying.
In Ptolemy's model, everything went around the Earth, while in Copernicus' model, most things went around the Sun, but not the Moon, which instead went around the Earth while the Earth traveled around the Sun. This didn't seem elegant at all, and it was one of the reasons few people accepted Copernicus' model at the time. Looking at Jupiter a couple nights ago, I noticed something interesting. Through the telescope, it's an enlarged circular shape, but I also saw 4 small dots nearby that I couldn't see without the telescope. I thought they were just faint stars, but tonight, looking again, these 4 little bits of light were not only in different places compared to Jupiter, they were in different places compared to each other. That means they can't be stars. Dad was happy to hear this. It seemed like he wanted to tell me what they were, but he wants me to figure it out. He said I should keep an eye on them over the next few days.
It's time to go to bed, but Dad says he's going to stay out a little longer. I just peeked out from the shack. He's got the telescope pointed at the horizon. I think I see a flickering light out there. Maybe it's that fishing boat he's worried about. Sid says parents are supposed to be paranoid. It's their job. Tonight's the 3rd night I sketched Jupiter with the 4 flecks of light nearby, and it definitely seems like those are moving relative to Jupiter. Initially, 3 were on one side, and the 4th was on the other side. Then, last night, I couldn't see one of them, as if it were behind it or in front of Jupiter. Then tonight, I saw all 4 again, 2 on each side. Could they be circling Jupiter? Dad says I was right. Their small bodies are circling. Wow, just had a stroke there.
Yeah.
Their small bodies circling Jupiter, and if I kept observing them for weeks, I'd see their circling pattern more clearly. I'm glad Dad didn't wait weeks to tell. Sorry, I got a notification that popped up. Weeks to tell me, because I immediately saw what he meant. Aristotle and Ptolemy said everything went around the Earth and only the Earth. But here was evidence that some things went around Jupiter.
I must say I'm disappointed that something's more important than recording.
It was an email, and it just popped up on the screen. Not much I can do.
I know, I'm just giving you a hard time. So people say Copernicus's model of everything orbiting the sun wasn't elegant because it had this one exception of the moon orbiting the Earth. But now that Earth wasn't the only one, Jupiter has moons orbiting it too. That's a strike against the part of Ptolemy's model where everything must orbit the Earth. But just because I found something that doesn't, this doesn't mean the Earth doesn't go around the sun. Just like before when I poked holes in Aristotle's theory without proving my case, this weakens Ptolemy's model but doesn't prove that the Earth goes around the sun. That will take a more direct evidence of some kind. I was too excited to sleep after seeing that and the lights around Jupiter were moons, so I started looking at the stars. Through the telescope I can see a lot more stars than there were with the naked eye, but none of them got bigger. They still looked like points of light. Viewing a planet through a telescope turned into a round disk, but stars still looked like stars and didn't get bigger. It seems like stars must be really, really far away for them not to be magnified into clear objects, even with a telescope.
Holy fuck, kid. Get a hobby or fucking... You know what? This company should pay us for fucking voice acting this entire fucking game. Dad said yes, every star is so far away that it's like its light is coming from a single point in space. And when that light enters Earth's atmosphere, the air scatters it a little. That scattering changes from moment to moment since the air is always moving. So one instant the light reaches my eye and the next instant it might not. And then it does again, and so on. This super fast flickering changes the star's brightness all the time, and that's why stars appear to twinkle. I thought the air looked too clear to affect light that much. Dad took me to the small lagoon at the bottom of the stairs, the one blocking the old army door that's underwater. The water looked still and clear, but when he held the LED light under it, even a couple of feet of water made the light shimmer. Dad said air doesn't scatter light as much as water does, but there's a lot more air, many kilometers of it between us and the stars. For a planet like Jupiter, it looks like a disk through a telescope, not a point because it's a lot closer. This means the light from it isn't coming from a single point, but from thousands of points on its surface. Each of those points might get scattered away by the air and not be visible at any moment. But on average, there will always be hundreds of points whose light rays get through. This is why planets don't twinkle in the same way stars do. That's really cool. Knowing this, I can easily tell whether something in the night sky is a planet or a star, even without a telescope.
The more you know. Thinking about everything I've seen through Sid's telescope, I told Dad at breakfast that the evidence clearly supported Copernicus's and refuted Aristotle and Ptolemy. The moon is not a smooth, perfect sphere. It has mountains and valleys. The sun is not eternal and unchanging. It has spots on it that appear and disappear. Ptolemy said everything orbited the Earth only, but Jupiter has moons orbiting it. Dad told me that he had another argument in favor of Aristotle and Ptolemy. If the Earth goes around the sun, then over a time span of 6 months, Earth would have been a huge distance and the position of the stars would change with respect to each other. To explain, he walked a few steps away and told me to hold my finger and thumb apart, so it looked like I was about to squeeze them.
He said the space between my thumb and finger is the apparent distance between his two arms. Then he said to walk towards him without changing the distance between my fingers. When I did, he got bigger than my finger measurement, of course. He said this happened because the closer something is, the bigger the angle it covers gets from your viewpoint, and that's called parallax. Using the same logic, if we move huge distances around the sun, we would get closer to and farther from stars, making them appear to move closer and farther apart from each other. But the apparent distance between the stars was never seen to change, so people believed Earth must be stationary. I told Dad this wasn't fair. The stars must be really far away not to get magnified into disks when seen through a telescope. And if they're that far away, the Earth's orbit around the sun is tiny compared to the distance to the stars. So we wouldn't see any changes in the separation between the stars. It doesn't prove Earth is stationary. Dad said this is exactly how supporters of Copernicus defended his model, but supporters of Ptolemy said it was a cop-out. I'm not finishing.
I don't agree, but I guess I see how the absence of parallax doesn't prove Ptolemy's model is right, but it doesn't prove it wrong either. I have more work to do. That was 128 pages. That was 28 pages.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was a month just so we could finish this one freaking puzzle.
Wow.
Which, I mean, what do we do? I don't even...
No, I gotta get out of this. Okay, I mean, so...
Are we trying to combine it, like the 3 different models?
That's what it looks like.
I would assume.
So we've got Jupiter with
moons.
Yeah.
All right, so then we want sunspots, which would be the middle one, I think. And then
the stars not getting bigger?
Yeah, I think so.
And
then
this.
That.
Nice.
Nailed it.
Booyah. Okay, let's see where this takes us, because it's probably going to take us to
another journal.
Yeah.
So I guess we kind of wanted to figure out Copernicus's model there.
Yeah.
I would have guessed, but
that's what it seems like.
Wee.
Bless you.
All right, Dor. Oh, Jesus Christ. Hey, look, another journal, motherfucker.
Oh, what do you think? Do we tackle a second one in this one?
I mean, depends. It's really a 2-minute video without us reading.
Touche. I think we should do a second one. As much as I don't want to do too much reading today. Fuck. Like that was 20% of our reading was done in that one journal.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. Okay, apart from Jupiter, Mars is another planet that's clearly visible in the night sky. I've looked at Mars through the telescope a few times, but it just turns a slight reddish dot into a slightly bigger reddish disk, with nothing much else interesting about it. It didn't help with my geocentrism heliocentrism debate anyways. Dad said that might not be true. If I had a lot more time to observe it, he said Mars was going through an unusual period now. Normally, like the sun and the moon, planets appear to travel through the zodiac constellations. The sun progresses through the zodiac constellations in the order they appear around the ecliptic. But sometimes planets stop and move backwards through the zodiac. For Mars, this was one of those times. Mars was currently in the constellation Sagittarius, and if it moved through the constellations like the sun does, it should be moving towards Capricorn. But instead, it was moving back towards Scorpio.
What?
Mind blown!
Dad says in a few weeks it'll stop and go forward again to Capricorn. Dad said the temporary backwards or retrograde motion of Mars was a problem for ancient astronomers. A model that put Mars on a spinning celestial sphere like the sun couldn't explain it. I asked Dad what Tommy thought about this, since it contradicted his beliefs that bodies made of ether in celestial realm have kept moving in perfect circles. Dad said it was tricky to explain, but at lunchtime he'd use a model to show me how it worked. Thank goodness. Dad said a simple way to make Mars orbit the Earth was to make it trace a circular path around it. But since the ancient astronomers knew about retrograde motion, they had to make Mars go backwards sometimes without violating the requirement that everything must go the same speed in the same direction along a circle. According to Dad, an ancient astronomer named Apollonius, whatever, fuck him. Apollonius? That
Maybe.
sounds right. Apollonius came up with an ingenious way to meet this requirement, and Tommy adopted it.
Apollonius showed that how the overall trajectory of Mars could look like it does, not a simple circle, but as a combination of two paths, where each of them were perfect circles being traced at constant speeds. I really couldn't understand what Dad meant by this. So we got Dad's Buddha board from the bunker at lunch. He likes using it to paint quick sketches using only water, and soon the sketch disappears as the water evaporates, so he can reuse the board and not need any paint. He set up the board on top of the table in the hut, and he rigged it to two motors, one that spun an axle at the center with a long arm attached, and another that spun a smaller arm around the end of the long arm. He put the paintbrushes on the end of the small arm, and he said it represents Mars, with Earth at the center of the board. The long arm traveling in a big circle like the main orbit of a planet, Dad called deferent. The other shorter arm, which goes in smaller circles, Dad called an epicycle. He then showed me how Mars could be made to go around in the small circle, the epicycle, while the center of the epicycle goes around the larger circle, the deferent, with the Earth at the center. By adjusting the two speeds of motion along the epicycle and deferent, you could have Mars sometimes reverse and go backwards, like the retrograde motion we see in the sky. I paused the arms at the moment. Oh, go ahead.
I paused the arms at the moment Mars was moving backwards in retrograde to show Dad, and he said I was right. This might sound bizarre, but playing with the spinning arms on Buddha board, I could make lots of unexpected and beautiful patterns just by changing the speeds of the epicycle and deferent. It wasn't just a model, it was fun and great art tool. I wish I could show this to everyone at school. I'm almost sad that I have to show how this beautiful tool is wrong about the ways the universe works. Wow.
Poor you. In Ptolemy's model, the Earth is fixed, so it's easier to figure out how things would look from an Earth since it's not moving. The outer celestial sphere of stars rotates once a day, and the planets do that too, except they slowly move relative to the stars. Dad simplified his model by ignoring the daily rotations because retrograde motion isn't something you see in a single night or day anyways. To show retrograde motion with the sun at the center, I needed to build a model that could visualize where Mars would be in the sky when Mars and Earth were both moving. I also ignored the diurnal rotation of the Earth, like Dad did, since it makes no difference. Fortunately, the stars don't move in my model, so at least something can stay still. The stars are fixed in the sky, so I decide to build my model on the bottom of a cut-off barrel, like my other model, painting the zodiac constellations on the outer rim, inside rim. First, I mounted a fixed light bulb on the bottom of the barrel in the center to be the sun. Then Sid helped me make 2 rotating arms, a short one that held the model of the Earth and a longer one for Mars. We also rigged a pen laser beam on the Earth so it would always point at Mars no matter where both planets were. But then I made a tunnel through Mars so the laser could pass through and hit the stars painted on the barrel to show where Mars would be on the zodiac as seen from Earth.
The last thing was deciding what speed the planets would move. Dad gave me a hint that in Copernicus' model, the revolutionary speed around the sun decreased the farther away you were. Mercury was the fastest, Venus less fast, Earth even slower, and finally the stars were stationary. That sounds like another elegant pattern to me. Not that elegance is the most important, of course. Finally, it was done, and I played with the speeds of both planets, making Earth go around the sun in less time than Mars took. And boy, did I get a shock. The laser beam moved through the zodiac constellation in the correct order, like we would see from Earth. But whenever the Earth caught up with Mars in their orbits and passed by, the beam would temporarily move backwards. I can even pause it to show Dad later the moment it happens. It's awesome. The retrograde motion of Mars literally emerged out of the model, and without any complications like epicycles and difference, without even knowing how it would happen while we were building it.
I explained to Dad at dinner how my heliocentric model could explain the retrograde motion of Mars in a simpler way than the geocentric model, because it required no far-fetched features like epicycles. Dad said he was very proud of how I discovered retrograde motion emergent naturally from my heliocentric model, but it didn't prove Ptolemy was wrong. It didn't prove it, but it was so much better and simpler. But then Dad said it turns out Copernicus' model didn't match observed locations of stars and planets as well as Ptolemy's model did. Not until Copernicus introduced his own epicycles. So when the models were done carefully enough to match what we saw in the sky, was Copernicus' models really simpler? And then Dad said even if it was, it doesn't matter because simpler doesn't mean true. I could tell Dad felt bad about how discouraged I was, but he said truth is truth. Nature doesn't have to appear beautiful or elegant or simple to humans. Maybe it was to cheer me up, but Mum said it was time for us to drain the water from the lagoon at the base of the stairs. She sent Sid and Guillaume to the boat to get the sump pump and enough solar cells to run it. But we'll have to time it right first thing in the morning, starting a few hours after high tide to drain the lagoon and still have time to see if the army door down there can open and explore what's in there and safely return before high tide comes and floods the lagoon again.
Okay, this might be dumb. Mars doesn't go on a circle like that, does it?
Have you ever watched it in the sky?
No.
Well, how would you know that?
No, I'm just going from previous knowledge. Does it? I'm asking you.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Oh, so it does little circles in its... Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, the more you know.
Okay, so what do you think we have to... I
think we got to get the speeds right. That's the issue.
So, if we hit...
Well, they're both at 0, so...
Right. So, what do you think we need?
What is Mars goes slower is what it's saying.
Okay, so what should we do? Let's go 100 and what? 150?
Sure, fuck it.
I think we got it backwards. 200 and 100.
Not quite. Nope. Almost. Please tell me it's max and minimum.
Well, it can't be minimum.
No. That's... Well, maybe make the Earth one a little quicker. Keep going, I think.
It looks like it's pretty damn close.
I was going to say, I think that looks pretty... Do we have to pull the fucking journal?
Oh, we just have to... Okay.
All right. Well, fucking.
So we did that one.
Stupid.
Okay.
And now this one. I mean, it looks like we just get the speed. Oh, we probably have to pause it when the.
Right at the moment of retrograde.
Yeah.
When's it going to be, Savi?
I don't know. Eventually.
Right there, as it starts to back off.
Yep. All right. There we go. Yay!
Yay! This goes out.
And another puzzle. Wow. How is that line
wire
making
looks-
those curves like that?
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Consistent wind. That's how that goes, right?
I guess so, eh?
That's a key thing.
I wonder if that's the sub pump.
Sump pump, though.
Sump pump?
Sump pump.
That's just a weird thing to say.
I know.
All right.
Okay, let's go see what this takes us to.
Right. Then down, and then we drain the lagoon at high tide, so we don't drown and die.
But there's no change in. We haven't had any change in time.
I mean, yeah.
Wow.
All right. And this is on full graphics, eh?
Yep.
Oh, look. It's a door.
And it's saving.
Oh my god, it's the beginning of Alien Covenant.
Whoa! God, I want to go watch that.
Yeah, man, not my thing.
What?
Not my thing.
I've always enjoyed the Alien movies. Okay, what's... Ooh.
Oh my gosh, more reading.
Looks like more reading and stars and all sorts of fun stuff. But I think we leave that one for next time.
Yeah. We freaking read like 50 pages today.
I mean, I think we did more than that.
Yeah, probably.
44. Okay, not quite.
Yeah,
pretty damn close. More reading today and all 3 episodes combined. Almost.
Almost, yeah. So,
yeah.
On that note, if you like reading or dislike reading, give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. And be sure to comment, like, subscribe, share. Check out our social medias. We have Discord, all that fun stuff. Everything's down below. Check it out. We hope that we can see you next time. And check out our other videos and all the other stuff we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Come
That's
join.
the end of the fucking video. Bye.
See you guys.